welcome to the Pop Council podcast, the show where we cover everything in pop culture. Each week on this show, we'll discuss topics in the geek world, as well as various fandoms such as Disney, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, theme parks, and everything in between. I'm Jami, Philbrick, entertainment journalist and critic for We Live Entertainment, and a member of the Hollywood Critics Association. Today, we have a great show for you. We will be discussing What If Episode 1 spoilers. Michael Keaton talks about his role in The Flash. Venom 2 delayed and a new poster. Shang-Chi will only be in theaters. Titans Season 3 premieres on HBO Max. Star Wars The Bad Batch finale. Free Guy review and much, much more. As always, I am joined by my co-host, Wendy Lee Szany. Hi, Wendy.
Hello, Jami. How are you? Happy Monday to you and to everyone watching.
Happy Monday. We are back, Pop Council, every Monday. Absolutely. How was your weekend?
It was actually pretty good. I started another K-drama, so you know that where that leads me, eating a lot of snacks and crying on my couch.
Is there anything you love more than snacks and watching a movie or a TV show at home?
I absolutely love turning into a couch potato. I mean, granted, once I'm done with a couple of episodes or, half the day is gone, then I feel really guilty about not being productive at all. And then I beat myself up. So then I go and work into like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. That's the vicious cycle that I'm always in.
That's the vicious cycle. It happens to all of us.
This is true.
As always, it's not Pop Council podcast without another member of the HCA joining us to talk about everything happening in pop culture this week. And we have our returning champion, James White from Empire Magazine. James!
Hello. Hey, Jami. Hey, Wendy. Hi, Internet.
Hello.
How is everyone doing?
Good, man. How are you? You've been on the podcast before, but tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I am the British part of the HCI. I know there's several Brits in there, but I like to consider myself the main British part of it. Sorry, Simon. I am the sort of online LA guy for Empire Magazine. I write and cover nerdy stuff for that. And I also write my own blog. Plus, I write for a few other places like SFX Magazine and a US magazine called Backstory. And I am just basically a massive nerd who loves Star Trek, Marvel, Star Wars, all the usual stuff.
We love it.
Yeah, and Empire is such a great magazine because it's really one of the last around the world, like pure film magazines.
It is. We feel like we're sort of shoring up the barricades as the tide keeps, washing away all these other titles, and we're still there, with little muskets trying to just defend right now. So yeah, it's been going for more than 35 years now, so still hanging around, just managing to cling on.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you mentioned Star Trek and Star Wars, a few other things, but we've been asking our guests the last few weeks, what is your favorite pop culture thing? For me, it's obviously the Green Arrow. You can see behind me all my Green Arrow stuff. What is and Wendy loves Wonder Woman, and so what is your thing?
For me, I still think I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Star Trek fan. It was something I grew up watching. I started watching the original series when I was 5. The Next Generation got me through school, and I've watched every episode of every show as much as possible. Next Generation is still my favorite, but yeah, I'm a huge Star Trek guy. Despite the little guy just over my shoulder who's disapproving squawk now. So
oh no.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you back. We've got a lot of great topics and things to talk about this week. Let's start with What If Episode 1. We had a chance, Wendy and I and James, I assume you might have as well, had a chance to see the first 3 episodes. We talked about sort of our non-embargo spoiler review last week, what we thought in general about the show. But now we can really dive deep into Episode 1, which of course was What If Captain Carter. What if Peggy Carter took the super serum instead of Steve Rogers? And it's kind of, the episode was interesting. It really kind of goes along the lines of Captain America, the First Avenger. We can see there that's almost exactly the same shot from the movie, except of having Peggy there instead of Steve. So there's some really interesting things in this episode, but let's just open it up. James, what were your thoughts on the Peggy Carter, on the Captain Carter episode?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, I'm a sucker for Haley Atwell in anything. I love Agent Carter. I loved Agent Carter the show. It completely thrills me to see the Union Jack on the Captain America, Captain Carter shield, obviously, because, you know, British stereotype, got to be done. I thought it was really clever. I thought it was really interesting because I felt like they did think through how the ripples would sort of go out from that one choice. I felt like they came up with some really sort of creative things. I love the little nods to things like when Peggy is with Bucky on the train and she sort of saves him and he goes, "Oh, you nearly ripped my arm off," and everyone's like, "Oh, of course they would say that," which was awesome. And I really sort of enjoyed the interplay with the various characters. I like that they still find a place for Steve, even though he's, you know, still weedy Steve. He gets to be basically proto Iron Man. And I love the various sort of little voice cameos from people. I'm so glad they got so many people back. I mean, they probably couldn't have gotten Chris Evans because I know he says he's done with it and he didn't really want to come back for that. But Toby Jones is there doing, you know, even though he's only got about 3 lines, he's there doing the voice. Dominic Cooper, everyone like that, you know, Neil McDonough. It's great to see all the voice people back. I thought it was a really clever idea, and I love the little sting right at the end, which is where they leave Captain Carter in the present day, technically Avengers 2012 era. But yeah, I really thought it went well. I was really happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wendy, what were your thoughts on this initial episode, and what were some of your favorite sort of spoilers about the episode?
I think for Captain Carter to kick off the series of What If, it's really the right call because, you know, you take a look at the Captain America story, technically the first chronically for movie release, not really the first Avenger we saw, but for actual chronicle order to, you know, he is the first Avenger. So I do love that What If did kick off with this story. So it's a little bit milder when it comes to like the what ifs and the ooh, but it was still really cool to see Peggy take on the role, you know, with the super soldier serum, and to kind of see the one thing that I like that they didn't change was the relationship between her and Steve. And there was still that heartbreak at the end. And I was like, yeah, this is going to happen, right? She's going to slay all the monsters and they're going to get their dance. It's going to be great. No, it's the same thing because they're both good people and they think of, you know, not just themselves, but the greater good, you know, which kind of brings her over to, present day, like James said, for Avengers. Like instead of Loki coming through, we got Captain Carter coming through that way.
Right.
That was really cool. I think one of the shocking moments for me was actually when Red Skull got crushed by the same champion that he was so excited to call forward. And I was like, oh, look at this massive thing. What's going to happen? And crunch. I was like, I did not see that one coming. And then just to add, just something I really loved about this series so far, and I know the public have only seen one episode, but I believe all 3 of us have seen all the first 3 episodes. So I just want to kind of applaud and point to the animation because I really do like the style of it. I like that there is that kind of like raw pencil sketch to that outline of the characters. I love how they animated the fight scenes, which there were a lot of them. And like I think Peggy delivered quite more of a punch than Steve. Like I remember watching the movie in comparison to this, I was like, oh, Peggy just like goes all out.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned the animation because I actually mentioned last week there was one small criticism I had about the show, as much as I love it, and it actually is the animation. I found the animation, I didn't love it. I didn't like the pencil-y kind of drawings. It actually reminded me of Archer a little bit in the animation.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if that's something specific they were going for. For me, it felt a little like stop motion-y, not really like, you know, animation. It felt like something that might have just been released on your phone 10 years ago, right? So, for me, the stories and obviously the MCU characters are enough for me to say, who cares about the animation, you know, because I love everything else so much. But that is my small criticism that I had with the animation. But I did love this episode. I like the series in general, but I really did like this episode. It's not as what ify as some of the other episodes get. It's kind of, I'll say, a standard what if in that sense. You know what I mean? I think it's not a far stretch to think Peggy Carter could have been the first Avenger, right? So it's not as wild as maybe some of the other ones will go. Now, also interesting, and I'd be very interested in hearing both of your comments about this, because Disney Plus also releases, I think it's called Legacies. And so for each Disney Plus MCU show, they have a show that is, 6 minutes that sort of gives you the history of that character in the MCU. And a lot of fans were upset that Agent Carter, the ABC TV series, is no longer considered canon and was not included in the Peggy Carter Legacies. But what's also interesting to me is what is canon is the Agent Carter one-shot, because Bradley Whitford returned as his character John Flynn, who is not in the movie Captain America First Avenger, but was in the Captain Carter one-shot, or the Agent Carter one-shot. So I just thought that was, I love Bradley Whitford, love, and the animated version looks just like him. Love seeing him in it. But just curious for both of you, and Wendy, I'll throw it back to you first. How do you feel that Agent Carter isn't canon? Now, we know Jarvis is, because he showed up in Endgame. So he's only canon from Endgame. But everything else that happened in Agent Carter is not canon, except for the one shot. So, how do you feel about that?
I feel all sorts of way, like I am hurt, and I'm not happy about it, because I really did love Agent Carter so much. I wish we got another season, and watching the What If series just kind of rekindled that want in me, that desire to see more of it could be just because I'm also a big fan of Haley Atwell, so I just want to see her. I think she's fantastic as Peggy. So it's kind of upsetting that they don't acknowledge it, to me personally, like, as canon, because it was a good story and they allowed like the Jarvis to be a part of it, but not those other storylines. And why not? Because what she does in the show doesn't technically affect too much of the current films.
Right.
And it's just a piece of her history. So I don't know, maybe they'll reconsider after seeing, the what ifs. And I want to say, and I want to ask this to the both of you, have we gotten confirmation there's going to be season 2 they're talking about season 2 of What If?
I believe there has been confirmation. Yeah, sorry, James. Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely doing season 2. I know it's going to be, this first season is 9 episodes. It was going to be 10, but there was a COVID issue with one. Right now there's going to be, I think, 9 in season 2 so far. They've definitely confirmed it's coming, just not when yet.
Well, I hope that when they do season 2, I need to see a second episode to Agent Carter.
I think that's even been confirmed. James, help me with that. I think it has been confirmed that Captain Carter will reappear in the series.
That I hadn't heard. I actually hadn't heard. I didn't know anything about what the season 2 would. But I wouldn't surprise me if they will.
I think it's been said that Captain Carter for sure will return at some point. But I don't hold us to that. Right. Pulling that out. The other interesting thing, Wendy, that you were just saying is, I feel that the plan over at Marvel Studios is, we know that they don't want the Netflix shows and the ABC shows to be considered canon. That doesn't mean that those actors and those characters won't become MCU canon at one point. Right. So we've already seen the Jarvis characters become canon. I wouldn't be surprised. We've heard rumors about Charlie Cox showing up as Daredevil in the next Spider-Man movie. There were some rumors running around, I think, about Vincent D'Onofrio returning as Kingpin in maybe Moon Knight. I can't remember what series it was, or Hawkeye, or one of the upcoming Disney Pluses. There were some rumors. They were just rumors. So I feel like that Feige and the MCU isn't against all of that stuff completely. They just want to do it their way and incorporate it in their way, because they weren't really involved in those productions when they took place. And I agree, it's a shame with Agent Carter, because that was a great series. But as we've already seen with Jarvis, they're going to include the stuff that should be included, and then maybe not, include what they don't want. But James, what do you think about this sort of Agent Carter controversy there?
Yeah, I agree with Wendy. I mean, I want to see Agent Carter considered canon, because, like she said, it doesn't really affect the timeline in terms of changing too much or making anything seem too different. I'm sorry, if Avengers Endgame can end with Chris Evans going back and basically essentially changing the entire timeline so he can go and have a dance with her and live with her, then Agent Carter should be canon, or at least off in a multiverse somewhere, still part of MCU canon, but still considered, its own thing. And I want more of it. If I can have more of it, I'd like more of it. I would love to see them. I know they've said recently that they're expanding their portfolio of animated series. I would be more than happy with an Agent Carter animated series. Get Dominic Cooper in, get the gang all back together. Hell, see if the writers McFeely and the other dude can come in and write it or oversee it, and have Tara Butters and the gang like show run it. I would be happy with an Agent Carter animated series. If they're not going to do any more, Agent Carter live action, Agent Carter animated, why not? I mean, she's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing that I've sort of heard circulate in the last week or two, is the idea of maybe Captain Carter making it in this multiverse MCU that we know is coming. Perhaps a live action Captain Carter could appear. Wendy, what do you think about that? Right? That's pretty.
Oh,
the idea
my
of
gosh.
actually seeing Haley in the outfit with the shield. That's pretty exciting.
I'm ready. I'm ready for her to. Oh, can you imagine? I need her to show up in Avengers Campus. Because they're doing that. They did that with Loki, and granted, it was to promote the show and stuff like that. But Loki would dress, in the most current whatever the show that costume. And because of What If, and they're playing now, now we're really playing with the multiverse. So like, why not? She just pops up one day and we just won't have Captain America for like that block or something.
Right. That's a great idea.
Fun.
I mean, I feel like they want to give the Anthony Mackie Captain America an opportunity to really be part of the parks and all that. But I agree with that. I mean, if we're introducing the multiverse, why not like Multiverse Day at Disneyland,
Oh my God, yes. 100%. Which, by the way, I'm still really mad that I didn't get to see Falcon as Captain America.
Oh, he wasn't, you didn't see him?
No, not that day. Yeah, when we stuck around for a good part of the day, but we just didn't see him that day. Well, I was very upset.
I mean, it's next week, but T'Challa Star-Lord, I mean, that would be great at Disneyland.
Yeah.
Like, we're just throwing out ideas.
Yep.
And so, James, we'll end with this. Captain Carter coming to live action. What do you think are the chances now that the multiverse is opened up? Do you think any of the characters we might see in the What If animated series could end up in a live action?
Maybe. I mean, that's the point of it. Endless possibilities. It might not end up that even someone like Captain Carter, I would love to see Captain Carter pop up and be part of a new Avengers team or something like that, or I get the feeling what they might end up doing more than anything is just a quick check-in. Maybe in something like Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, you just do a little bit like, oh, and here, like suddenly a portal opens and you see like T'Challa Star-Lord or something like that. You see something like that. Obviously, you can't do that, but you could do something from one of the What Ifs as a little sort of extra multiverse treat. I don't know their plans. I don't know Kevin Feige's brain, which is, filled with everything right now. But I get the feeling they could reference it and they could have little Easter eggs and little hints of it. Whether it enters really into the main MCU timeline, less likely, but hey, I'll take anything we can get.
No, and you made me just think that we all think we saw Peggy Carter in the background in Loki, don't we? So they've already started that idea that you were mentioning a little bit. So yeah, very interesting. Some very interesting things to come up, and we'll be talking about the second episode of Disney Plus's What If next week. So great.
I can't wait.
I can't wait. Yeah. The first 3 episodes were awesome. We're really very, very good. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the time that we can talk about the next 2 episodes of this show in the following weeks. Well, some other interesting news popped up last week. The great Michael Keaton, one of our favorite actors, he's got a new action film coming out called Protégé, and he was doing some press for it. And our friends over at Collider got a chance to talk to the man, the once and future Batman, about returning to, the Flash and playing Batman. And here is his exact quote. It was weirdly and ironically easy, a little bit emotional, just a rush of memories without giving anything away, which I can't. Basically, the first shot, not of the entire movie, but let's say the introduction of Batman, is so good that when we walked on and started talking about a couple of shots and angles, I went, whoa, this is big. This is great. I don't even mean for me, just the imagery. It's great and reminiscent to some degree of Tim Burton. Well, thank you, Mr. Keaton, for giving us that. That is quite a drop. So let me throw it to James and start with you. What do you make of these comments? Obviously, Mr. Keaton seems to be pleased with what they're doing and the way they're bringing his character back and the overall journey of this Flash movie. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm still mostly surprised this thing is actually shooting after about 600 years of it, stop starting, director change, writer change, director change, writer change. No, I'm thrilled because it feels like Michael Keaton isn't necessarily a guy you would expect to really over-enthuse about things. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who overhypes things. He also doesn't spoil things like Tom Holland will.
Right.
But the fact that he is this enthusiastic about it and he references the whole Tim Burton thing has me very excited because Team Flash are really trying to bring the feeling of that Batman. I would be absolutely over the moon if his Batman enters to a Danny Elfman sting. If they can even get the rights to do that, just have his theme tune just in a second, just play just for a moment as we see him for the first time. That would be awesome. That would be all my dreams come true. But yeah, I'm excited by it. I'm excited by the possibilities. I'm enthusiastic if Michael Keaton is enthusiastic. So yeah, I think this could be great. I don't know how they're going to use him. I worry that there's a lot being crammed in here between like Batfleck and now Keaton Batman and everything else, and the possibility of like multiple universe stuff and everything. Interesting that both movie franchises are now going multiverse, almost not at the same time. I know the DC TV stuff has been multiverse for a while, or even just collapsed on multiverse in. But it's kind of interesting how the multiverse is suddenly the new hot thing that they're all doing. But yeah, I'm excited by it. I think it gives me a good feeling about Michael Keaton being enthusiastic.
I completely agree. I think you're right about maybe being a little worried there's too much cramming in, but I'll leave that and see what the final product looks like. As far as his enthusiasm, you're absolutely right, because I remember interviewing him when The Founder was coming out, and it was before Spider-Man Homecoming, and I tried to get him to bite on that. He wouldn't bite on any Spider-Man stuff. So the fact that that he was willing to talk about Batman and talk about it the way he did in this interview, maybe Kevin might not be too happy with it. I mean, it's not quite Alfred Molina, but I mean, it's sorry, no, it wouldn't be Kevin because it's not Marvel anymore. We're talking DC. My wires got crossed. But I think that it's going to be interesting. The fact that he's excited about it, and you mentioned it also, the way he talked about the introduction makes me think that we're going to hear a swell of Danny Elfman music. I mean, the imagery I had was that he's sort of going to be introduced kind of swinging in the way Batman sort of swung in the first Batman to the first time we saw him. So, yeah, I'm super excited about it. And I think that, the fact that he's jazzed about it, I think, is the best part. Wendy, what are your thoughts on this comment?
I think this comment kind of almost equals to his stamp of approval. And I think for, old time players like Keaton, who's probably seen almost everything inside this industry, and they're not usually, not to say that they're not on set and be like, oh, this is great, but for them to so openly sing praises for a film that, for superhero films, it's very much, a secret, and you don't want to say anything, just positive or negative. You just don't want to say anything because you don't want any sort of the cat out of the bag. And here he is, he can barely contain his excitement, I feel like, in this comment. And you can tell how much he enjoyed being Batman by this comment. And it just kind of brought him back to that, that year, those days on set, putting the cowl back on. So I think that's going to shine through his performance. And I think, when you have an actor such as Keaton arrive on a set, with actors that are a little bit younger, I think that elevates the set a little bit, the performance and things like that. So I just can't wait to see. I've been very excited for this Flash movie. Granted, like James pointed out earlier,
Right.
they're still shooting it. It's changed hands, different directors, this and that. I really hope moving forward, no more issues as far as like the creative thing goes. And so like, no more changing hands, no more directors changing this and that. Like, I think, knock on wood, the only thing that may like delay the production potentially could be the pandemic. Right. That would be the only thing. But I imagine they're taking all the precaution. So this just makes me really excited because I've been dying for them to play with the timeline, not the multiverse, but the Flashpoint paradox for a long time in live action in a film. Because we've seen it in the CW show a bit, and we've seen it obviously in the DC animated show, which is one of my favorite animated DC cartoons. But God, I just can't wait, and I am so happy Keaton is involved in this.
Well, I think the thought is that Keaton would be playing sort of the Thomas Wayne role from Flashpoint. If that, as in the sense of not the Batman Flash is used to, and a new, different Batman, an older Batman, kind of showing him the ropes. So it'll be interesting to see how much of the Flashpoint story they sort of stick to, and how much it kind of becomes a multiverse story. And then this last thing I wanted to say about the enthusiasm of Mr. Keaton in this role. If you followed him throughout the years, yes, he left Batman when Tim Burton left the original, after the two, and hasn't returned to the role or returned to DC since then. But I mean, I remember being at the RoboCop remake press conference. He's the villain in that. And Gary Oldman is also in that movie. So at the time, you had Commissioner Gordon from the Nolan films, and you had Burton's Batman on stage together. And you guys know our journalist colleagues. There's no way that press conference was going without someone getting up and being like, "Hey, Batman's here, Commissioner Gordon's here." And of course, Michael Keaton just like looked at the audience deadpan and was like, "I'm Batman. I'm Batman." And he's done it on Letterman and Conan and other shows. I've seen him where he kind of breaks and is like, "I'm Batman," And so he loves being. I really think he loved being Batman and loves the idea of being like, in a sense, the original screen Batman, right? And really being one of the first screen superheroes after Christopher Reeve. So I think if he feels this script is on point, and the directors and the producers in the studio are all going they must have for him to sign on, unless they just gave him a boatload of money. And I actually think it's probably both. I think it's a boatload of money, and he thought it was really good in order to do it. And so, so I'm just super excited to see what they all have in store with the whole multiverse and the Flashpoint storyline. And then, of course, I think we all know Michael Keaton is the real draw I think Batman is the real draw. The OG Batman is the real draw in that film. So moving on to we went to Marvel, DC, back to Marvel, but on the Sony side, some big news from Venom last week. This actually dropped this morning. This is just a little image from the poster. There's two new posters. Both feature, this is sort of a Two-Face Venom Carnage kind of combo. And then you have another poster where it's just sort of Venom and Carnage going at it. And then the other big news regarding Venom last week is that the film is in fact delayed 2 weeks. So they have pushed it back from September 24th to October 15th, due, one would think, certainly in part with the Delta variant and sort of the pandemic at where we are right now. So let's just start with James. I'll throw it to you. What do you think of the new poster and the delay? Are you worried that it might get delayed again?
I'm not sure. I mean, I know they're really going for that kid audience, that they really want to have the kids enjoy these two symbiotes ripping people apart. I think what I'm worried about is just that they're seeing some issues with other superhero movies. Suicide Squad hasn't done particularly great, but Free Guy original did really well. I think what they are worried about is people just not being willing to go back into cinemas just yet, and being worried that a big movie like this, a big expensive film like this, might get hit. Am I worried that it's going to go back even further? Probably not at this point. I think they're kind of stuck, going to be releasing it around the sort of fall, autumn time. To be honest with you, I think a mid-October release date probably makes more sense because it's closer to Halloween. I feel like Venom is more of a Halloween-y type film that you do there. But yeah, do I worry about it? I worry about it in general. I mean, the posters are fine as they go. The trailers have been fine. I enjoyed Venom for what it was. I'm not really a massive Venom fan. I wasn't a huge fan of the first film. I want Andy Serkis to have a nice, successful film. I like him as a director. I like him as an actor. But I don't know. The trailers haven't sold me yet. So honestly, I have a hard time sort of drumming up the requisite excitement to be truly worried about Venom going anywhere right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I agree with you about the first Venom. I mean, it was fine. It was great, wasn't bad, but it was fine. I'm a little bit more excited for this because of the Andy Serkis element, right? I feel like Andy Serkis is a very good director and could kind of push the envelope a little bit with this. So I'm excited for that. And obviously more Woody and more Carnage is exciting. I'm a little bit more concerned about it getting pushed back. And I also agree, I think mid to late October is a perfect release date for it. And it's definitely a kid's movie because my cousin's 14-year-old. I mean, all he cares about is Venom. I'm like, Venom, really? So yeah, it is for the sort of the 14-year-old boy market, I think. I think we're just gonna have to wait and see. I mean, I agree with you. I think, the performance of Black Widow and the performance of Suicide Squad, even though it got rave reviews, which is what makes it really ironic, its failure in the box office. I think that's definitely probably what Sony's looking at. I think we're just gonna have to wait and see the next few weeks. I think Shang-Chi, which we're gonna talk about next, is gonna be a marker for Venom. If people don't go to the theaters to see that, then I bet Venom will move back a little bit. And then, all the rest of the fall movies are going to go in tow, depending on how bad the variant is in the next few weeks to month, and how much people want to go to the theaters. People went to the theaters this weekend to see Free Guy, not pre-pandemic numbers, but some of the better pandemic numbers. So, maybe it's original content. Maybe with Suicide Squad, they felt once bitten, once shy from the original. Black Widow. I know a lot of families that went to see it at the theater once opening weekend and then paid $30 and just watched it 10 times at home on Disney Plus. So they wouldn't have gone to the theater 10 more times that weekend to see it, but they probably would have gone one more time. You know what I mean? So I don't know how much that hurts it or doesn't hurt it. And obviously there's a little bit with that Disney Plus component to talk about with Shang-Chi next. But before we move on from Venom, Wendy, I want to hear what you have to say.
I am very excited for Venom 2, considering that for Venom, the first one, I just kind of like the both of you said, it's fine. It was okay. I think what threw me off a little bit was like how much comedy was in there with, between like Tom Hardy's character. Oh my God, I can't remember his name for some reason. Eddie Brock and
right.
And the symbiote. And but once I saw the movie, and the mood was set, and they let that carry over into the next movie so it doesn't feel so like this is a different director. I enjoy that. And so I fully embrace kind of like that vibe now. And I am very curious to see how they handle Carnage. I've been forever wanting to see Carnage in a film, which brings up an interesting point because you guys are both like, oh, I'm so excited because the kids are excited, which, yes, when I first learned about Carnage, I was also young, a kid. But I always thought, too, that if you're going to have any movie with Carnage in it, it should be rated R. But then that worries me about rating it R means the younger kids under 17 can't go and see this film, who they really would like to go see. So you're kind of left with that, like, how much can we push Carnage to be Carnage in a PG-13 rating versus let's just go balls out for an R rating. So I do wonder about that, since we're talking a little bit about, box office numbers and how Suicide Squad performed, and, it's rated R. We're in the midst of a pandemic. It was also released A and date to HBO Max. So there's like a lot of factors in there, but
right.
Excited for the film. I'm actually more excited for Venom 2 than I was for the first one. Like the excitement's definitely there. Very curious to see how Woody Harrelson portrays Cletus Cassidy. I think he's going to have a lot of fun with that character.
Yeah, I agree. I'm interested to see, because I felt like his performance in the end credit scene in Venom was maybe poorly directed. And so I'm interested in seeing how his performance as Carnage changes now that he's directed by Andy Serkis as opposed to the past director. I agree with you. I think it's going to be a little bit more threatening and a little bit more, less comedic than it seemed from the end credit scene.
Yeah, I'm thinking they'll leave the comedy up to Eddie and to Venom and let Cletus Cassidy just be as like a psychopath like he is.
Well, I think the comedy is between Eddie and Venom, right? Like that's where the comedic moments happen. And then, you need the villain to, be really scary. And so hopefully they deliver with that. Well, we mentioned a little bit, delays and box office and what's being released and what's not being released on streaming and where. And some interesting news this week about Shang-Chi and the 10 Rings, the latest Marvel film being released on September 3rd, I believe. So there was a lot of question of whether this movie will also do Disney Plus day and date release the same way Jungle Cruise and Black Widow, of course, before it. And Disney CEO Bob Chapek said this week that the film would only be released in theaters and not be released on Disney Plus, which I think was some good news. But then he said something really stupid, and he said that the film would be an interesting experiment. The film star, Simu Liu, came out and said, "We are not your experiment," which good for him. Listen, I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I don't really know what to make of it. I think that I think he said something dumb and didn't really read the room and have the right tone with what he was saying here. But Wendy, why don't I throw it to you? And I'm curious what you think of his comments. Is it a good thing that the film is not going to be on Disney Plus, given where we might be in 3 weeks with the pandemic being even worse off? I mean, I know everyone kind of pointed, and with the Scarlett Johansson lawsuit pointed to like, oh, maybe you shouldn't. The theater owner said you shouldn't have done Disney Plus, but I mean, it almost seems like, and I don't think, to all due respect to the CEO of Disney, I don't think he meant it this way, but it almost seems like they're dumping the film. From that comment, it read like they're dumping the film. And that's not a good look for the first Asian superhero movie that Marvel's doing with an Asian director and an all-Asian cast and Asian star. Wendy, what are your thoughts on this?
I really fully in my heart don't believe he meant it like that. But the wording within the context was not, I don't feel like was the best choice. I think he meant it as not like, let's take our first, Asian superhero lead in a feature MCU film as an experiment. I think he meant it as the release strategy. So the wording needed a little bit of tweaking there, but like what's been said, I really don't feel like he's kind of like, no, Shang-Chi fail. Like I don't think he's saying that. I feel like as the Disney CEO, he would like to see everything that Disney does succeed, as any CEO would. Yeah. With that said, I think the decision to change Shang-Chi to a theatric release only for it's like the 45-day window now, that I think maybe was affected by the numbers from Black Widow. Maybe from the Jungle Cruise, maybe they're realizing maybe this day and date isn't working out like we thought it was going to. Plus, on top of that, there was that deal that, let's see, it was AMC and WB that they had just inked that deal saying about the 45-day window, which technically is not set to happen until next year. Right. But perhaps, being within the industry, he may have heard about it before we even did. Right, because he's like in it. So maybe he thought about it and said, let's give this next major film a try. If this strategy works, we'll continue with it. If not, we'll fall back to the other one. We've already done it before. So, I mean, so I think as a business, you have to always kind of find ways to reinvent and do what's best financially for your company. Because at the end of the day, Disney is a business. So we will see. But I do kind of wish he had chosen a different way to express that.
I completely agree. And I agree with you. I don't think that was his intent. Certainly if you spend $150, $200 million on a movie, you want it to be successful. You don't want to just dump it. But I think we all have to be very careful with what we say and how we say it, and intent and what we mean, and that our meaning is communicated and comes across. And I think that clearly it's not a good look to have the star of your film outing you. This is all bad, and it could have very easily been avoided with just a little bit of a different language, perhaps. But I agree also in the sense that it is experiment with streaming, because we don't know. We don't know what it's going to do. And also, listen, as much as I think we're glad that it's getting the theatrical release it deserves, whether that's 45 days exclusive in theaters or 90. I mean, I think we're all glad about that. But as I mentioned, the world has changed in the last 3 to 4 weeks. I mean, Black Widow came out, June 5th or something? A lot's happened since then. And so you kind of got to read the room, and maybe putting it on Disney Plus in addition to theaters would help. I mean, I'd hate to think of the idea of it only being in theaters, 2 or 3 weeks from now. Things are a lot worse than they are even right now, believe it or not. That could happen. And then it's really a financial failure because no one can go to the theaters and it's not available on Disney Plus. So I don't know. James, I want to hear you weigh in on this. What were your thoughts of Mr. Chepnik's comment and the idea of, do you think that they should release Shang-Chi on Disney Plus or keep it where we are right now, keep it in theaters?
Yeah, well, I would agree that the comments were misguided at best and kind of dumb at worst. I think maybe he needs to give another pass on that script, or maybe have an intern come in and rewrite it for him. But I don't know. I'm really in two minds about the release schedule. I want to see this film succeed in a big way. I want this to be the next Black Panther, basically. I want this to be zeitgeisty and huge and starting something, because I think it deserves to. I think it's serving an audience who deserves to see something huge directed at them that the rest of us can also enjoy. But there are going to be things in there that only an Asian American audience is really going to get. And I love that idea because it's about time. It's about time. And I don't know, I would love to see it be a huge hit. Will it be a huge hit if it's been released just in cinemas? Well, I don't know yet, because the Lambda variant is on the way, the Delta variant raging. People are worried about going to the cinema. People are worried. People are annoyed about wearing masks for some stupid reason. Just wear a mask, people. Just wear a mask in the cinema. Enjoy a movie. Yeah, can take it down for 2 minutes to enjoy your popcorn and your whatever, but just wear a mask. Just be careful and be sensible about it. Anyway.
And James, these are the same people that are refusing to wear a mask that will wear a mask all weekend long at Comic-Con when they're cosplaying, but they won't wear a mask now. It's like,
no.
Just imagine you're cosplaying, okay? Like, put on your Spider-Man mask, and
you can literally make your masks match your outfit. I have way too many masks, and they all match my outfit.
Of course,
it was fun. But yeah, I hope it could do maybe Free Guy type numbers, maybe a little bit more than that. I mean, Free Guy cinema only, because of the deal that Fox had previously established with HBO, that it goes straight to HBO. It cannot go on Disney Plus,
right?
So at least not till that deal is up. So I would hope it does those kinds of numbers, maybe a bit more, because the Marvel name carries something. Obviously, it didn't completely help Black Widow, but that was a different time, and there was the Disney Plus thing. So, yeah, I think it's probably a good idea to put it out in cinemas only, to give it that feel of, oh, you have to go and see it, and I think people will show up for it. Will they show up for it in enough numbers to make it the big hit it deserves to be? We'll see, but I'm just hopeful. I'm just hopeful for it. I'd like to see Simu Lee become a big star, because the dude deserves to.
100%, absolutely.
He's a charismatic, funny, interesting, intelligent guy who occasionally puts his foot in his mouth, but he's also very good at what he does. So
Well, and also I think it's important to note with Black Widow, yes, it had the MCU banner, but it's also was about a dead character, and
that's true.
And we knew it was sort of setting up. It's a prequel, and we knew it doesn't affect the timeline going forward, and we knew that it was setting up Disney Plus shows. So, this is not that. So, yeah, I agree. Let's put it in theaters. And, hopefully this thing goes away and the movie comes out and everyone can go see it. So
I can't
I
wait.
agree. It deserves to be seen. And also I agree. Same importance as a Black Panther, Captain Marvel. Like, this movie needs to be treated by the studio with that sort of reverence. I agree. Moving back to DC, moving to television, the season 3 of Titans premiered this weekend, I believe actually maybe Thursday on HBO Max. If you haven't seen the first 2 seasons and don't have HBO Max, go to TNT. They are rerunning the first 2 seasons right now on TNT, and then you can watch all 3 seasons on HBO Max. I believe they released 3 episodes this week at first. The first episode was titled Barbara Gordon, second episode titled Red Hood. There he is, our Red Hood, and who is going to be the big bad this season. And then Dove and Hank, not Dove and Hawk, Dove and Hank was the third episode. I believe that this is just sort of the premiere drop, and that they're going to go 1 episode a week after this. And as I mentioned, Red Hood is definitely the villain. For those of you that know the comic books, the first season of Titans really was the Terror of Trigon storyline from the comics. The second season was really the Judas Contract, Deathstroke, Jericho's kind of plot line. And this was Death in the Family into Red Hood. And it was interesting. Death in the Family, I mean, that's they got that done in about 35 minutes in that episode, and I kind of feel like Death in the Family, it deserves, like, that's an important story from the comics. Like, I feel like it deserves a little bit more time, but I get it. Red Hood is really the thing, right? And we've also spent 2 seasons setting up Jason. So Jason Todd, who becomes the Red Hood. So while I thought they moved through Death in the Family a little quickly, I liked setting up Jason as Red Hood. I liked the tension between Dove and Hawk and where they're going with that without giving anything away. And then we also had the introduction of Barbara Gordon. And it was great. We've been talking a lot about Batgirl the last few weeks. Barbara Gordon is Commissioner Gordon and presumably, we don't know yet, but presumably Oracle in this series, and is the former Batgirl. So that I thought was great. And also for our Eagle Eye fans, I don't know if we saw in the first episode, but they teased other potential Robins. We saw Carrie Kelly, who is from The Dark Knight Returns. We saw Stephanie Brown, who is Spoiler. So it's interesting where they're kind of going with these stories. James, I know you have seen the first episode, maybe even the first 3, I'm not sure, but I know you saw the premiere. What did you think, and what do you think about the direction that the series is going this season?
Well, I have an interesting relation with it in that I watched the pilot way back when it was DC Universe, I think it launched on.
Yes.
RIP DC Universe. And I wasn't completely taken with it originally. I wasn't the biggest fan. I love the DC, like the Arrowverse shows. I still watch The Flash and Legends and things like that. This felt like DC TV with extra swearing and a bit more violence, and people can occasionally make drug references, or as in the case of this episode, one of the episodes that they've released, Toke on a giant bong. So
right.
But I have to admit, I watched the first 3. I watched the first 1 to be sort of like, let's get myself back into this and see if I can really dig into it. And I actually really enjoyed it. I thought they'd really moved it along and it really become something very entertaining. Even though I didn't have a complete background on all the characters and everything, I felt like I wouldn't call it a relative newcomer. I mean, I know the basic comic stuff, but as a relative newcomer to the show, I felt like it didn't jump me out of the show. I felt like I knew what was the dynamics were going on, the storyline going on. I was really impressed by how they handled at least the death and then the reveal of Red Hood. I agree that the death in the family thing is kind of like, oh, and we're done with that. And here's Red Hood.
Yep.
I'm kind of interested that, you know, spoiler alert, if you've yet to watch the third episode, there is another death in the family, in the Titans family, which I probably shouldn't actually say, just in case you haven't watched it. But, you know, it's kind of an explosive moment, literally. I thought that was handled quite well because it had the whole episode building up to it, had the feel of, oh no, there's a clicking clock, you know, it'll be there, and then they'll save them at the last minute, and it'll be fine. Right. Oh, they did not save them. That was interesting. So yeah, I was impressed with it. Got to admit, I love the Barbara Gordon reveal. I love that she's Commissioner Gordon. I think
yes,
idea. I'll be fascinated to see if they go the Oracle route or if they just keep her as Commissioner Gordon for now, just doing the one thing and maybe evolve into that. But yeah, I got to admit, I enjoyed it a lot more than I actually expected to, because I actually went into it thinking like, oh, Titans, I tried it. I didn't really like it. And honestly, I think I'm going to catch up and dive back into the first two seasons.
Yeah, first season is definitely hit or miss. I think they were really trying to figure out with the material, like where their kind of their sweet spot was. And I've talked about it on this show. Season one, really the first episode of season two is the finale of season one. And I hate when shows do that. It's just really annoying because then the rest of season two is a whole other story. You're like, wait, what? But I think they really found their footing in season two. And yeah, I'm excited about where they're going in season three. And I like the way they've, done Batman. Like they've sort of relegated him to this kind of position where he's such a-hole that you don't even want. Like, it's not like, I know with Gotham, like you wanted the kid to become Batman. Like the problem with doing non-Batman stories around Batman characters is that inevitably you just want to see Batman. I mean, I think that's a problem with Pennyworth, is that inevitably you just want to see Batman stuff. And the nice thing about this show is they found a way of making it so like you don't want Batman. You really want Dick Grayson and the Titans, and having them come home to Gotham in this season, I think is great. I really hope now that we've established that Doom Patrol and Titans take place on different Earths, please, 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 DC, give us Cyborg on Titans. I know why you didn't. I know that he was in the Justice League in the movies and we couldn't cross over, but he's not in the movies anymore. So please, please put him back where he belongs with the Titans. That's my plea, Wendy. Curious what your thoughts of and your expectations for the season.
So kind of echoing James's thought, almost identical. I remember when season one of Titans came out and being such a big fan of Young Justice, because, I really love all the DC animated stuff. And I was such a big fan of Young Justice. And so naturally I was pretty excited to see Titans. And then I wasn't really feeling it, to put it just very lightly and casually. So I didn't really follow through with season one. I watched a few and I was like, I just couldn't get into the storyline and it didn't come together for me. So skipped the remaining of season one, all of season two. And then I saw this on the notes and I was like, well, I guess I'll give one episode a go. Zero expectation going in, like slightly annoyed, like, okay. Surprisingly, like I was shocked that, I was like, okay, I'm going to like fold my laundry while I'm doing this, like house chores, whatever, like I'm dusting, I'm cleaning. I kid you not, I'm not exaggerating. I had a duster in one hand and I stood in front of my TV for 15 minutes, like, they did what? They did what now? This is episode one. And then just stood there and then just sat down didn't dust and finished watching episode one. Unfortunately, didn't get to episode 2 and 3, but I kind of already knew what happened because I did look into it to prep for the show. So I am hoping season 3 continues on the same trajectory. Now you can't go mediocre from this. You got to keep going forward with, like, I'm so impressed with the changes that I don't know if season 2 was like this
Season 2 was better than 1. I think season 2 was where they started to find their footing with the Deathstroke story.
Nice. Okay. And this one, they're really leaning into that.
Yes.
Just the shock, I'm not afraid to do this in the writing, and like, it's okay to have like the deaths and the reveals, and, you catch the audience off guard. And I like that because I think sometimes as the audience, we're so used to like, oh, title characters can't die. They just can't die. They'll live forever. Right. And so when they inevitably do, you're like, wait, hold up though. Did they really just do that? And that's impressive, because that means that they understand that the show isn't about one singular person. It's about the team, the relationship with Titans, and their journeys. So, and I'm a big Nightwing fan, so I'm very excited.
And
I'm back in it now.
Yeah, you're talking about the deaths, and one would think from some of the promotional material that, and from the fact that there is a storyline in the comics where Donna Troy dies and comes back. Who is Donna Troy? I think we haven't seen the last of Wonder Girl. I'm pretty sure Donna Troy will come back from the dead in this episode, because it's within in the season, because it's within her comic book storyline. So, well, we have a few minutes left, and we've been covering this the entire season, Wendy, and I feel like we would be remiss if we don't mention the two-part finale of Bad Batch, Star Wars Bad Batch. There's the team. The final episode, Kamino has been destroyed, and the final episode was really getting the band back together and getting them off Kamino, because all the guys, all the clones are back together, and then Omega, of course. So I guess, Wendy, I'll just throw it to you. Like, what were your thoughts on this finale? And of course, a lot of people on the line are talking about the scientist who was spotted wearing the same emblem that Dr. Pershing has on his costume in Mandalorian. And we knew that there were some cloning and maybe Snoke and Guguru kind of connections with Omega in this, and obviously Boba Fett with this. So what did you sort of make of the finale?
I wished it was 10 minutes longer. I felt like, as much as I love the two-part finale, I felt like the finale, they spent the entire episode escaping Kamino, where I would have liked to see them hit that Kamino, like, escape in 15 minutes, and with the remaining 15, let's move forward, because I just felt like there was so much more story to be told. I also didn't feel like, because they were so busy trying not die underwater, that we didn't get as much of, like, the Crosshair, not interrogation, but the, what is it called, the intervention, I guess you can call it, between him and his former teammates. I would have liked to see a little bit more of that, but what I did like was that you still saw Crosshair at the very end there, helping out Omega, because of what she said resonated even just a little bit with him. I wish we had solved the mystery of whether or not that inhibitor chip is still in his head. I personally think it is. I think he was misled and told, and he's just believing the Empire because they didn't leave him behind, not realizing that they're just using him as a pawn. They literally left him. They didn't care. He's expendable because he's a clone. And we know how the Empire feels about clone. They want to phase them out. And it was also really sick to make that one clone trooper on the bridge to report, oh, what's going on with Kamino? You hear that his voice getting caught in his throat. And they were all, this was their home. They were all created there. They grew up there. They met their brothers. They were trained there. So I was like, man, the Empire is like really so evil. And I couldn't believe. And that's why I really wanted more of it, because it was just so like, let's all spend the entire time in Kamino, where we could have explored what's happening within the Empire, what's Tarkin up to now, and, kind of give us a better lead into season 2. So, but still looking forward to season 2. I think this is a good show. It's a slow burn show that takes us through the arcs and all that stuff a bit slowly, but I think we needed this as a base so we can fully, lean into episode 2 and see how that connects to perhaps the Snoke / Palpatine weird cloning process and the search for the midichlorians, with Grogu and all that stuff.
I mean, they're clearly going somewhere. I liked that this sort of wrapped up season 1. It was a nice ending to it. I agree. I would have liked a few minutes less of, escaping Kamino, so that we could maybe, draw a couple cliffhangers for season 2, or show where we're going, or answer some of those questions. But I did really like that they did kind of, in a sense, wrap up that turmoil between Hunter and Crosshair and the rest of the group and Omega. So, James, what were your thoughts on the finale of Bad Batch?
Yeah, I enjoyed it for the most part. The one issue I had, I think, and it's an aesthetic thing, is that second part when they're doing all the escaping from Camino. I felt like I had to turn the contrast up on my TV so high for some scenes because I could not see what was going on.
So dark.
The voice is fine, but it looked like a bunch of shadows were wandering through another hall of shadows, and I was just like, okay, I think they're going this way. Maybe they're trying to escape to that chamber. I can't tell. But yeah, I would have to agree with you, both of you, that I think they could have split their time a little bit more evenly between the escape, which was good, but it was a lot of sort of like, we're in this problem. Oh, this chamber thing. Oh, but we found a way out of it. Oh, but now we're in this. It was a little bit like watching people figure out a video game thing where they're trying to get to the next level and get out of it. And I think it was so interesting to see that little last sting with the scientists being brought into the chamber and everything. We know what's going to happen. We know basically what that can lead to. But yeah, I think there could have been more scope for a few other characters to be brought in at the end to sort of set up some things. But they're doing what they're doing, and I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see for season 2. I'm assuming it's sometime dropping in 2022. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see about that. And that's all the time we have for today's show. As I'm reading through our goodbyes, I want to show a little audible here. This is a picture Jim Lee, the very legendary artist from DC Comics, created for Suicide Squad. And you can see Idris there and Peacemaker and Starro. So I thought that was really cool. And I just wanted to show that to you as I thank our audience for tuning in this week and reminding you that we're just one of the shows the Hollywood Critics Association has been launching this year. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, like this video, and tune in to Pop Council every Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Also, The Long Box with Tessa Smith and Jonita Davis airs Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time, 8 a.m. Pacific time. Horrifically Horrifying on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. with Heather Wixon and Kevin Tent. Our new show, Hollywood Approved, with Yale and Kristen at 3 p.m. Pacific time. What to stream on Thursdays at 11 a.m. hosted by Morgan Rojas, and What's Trending in Hollywood on Fridays at 11 a.m. hosted by Scott Menzel. And we also want to remind you that this Sunday is the Hollywood Critics Association's TV Awards that we will be presenting from downtown LA. And I would like to thank James White. Yay!
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
James, tell everyone where they can check you out.
You can find me on Twitter at @JamWhite. Most of my work goes up at empireonline.com, which is Empire's website. I also have a Substack because everyone has a Substack now, and that is jameswhite, all one word, .substack.com, in which I review movies and TV shows, occasionally spout opinions, and also do pop culture pick where I get to rave about something I love, like Cobra Kai or Never Have I Ever or something like that. That's where you can find me.
Love it.
Awesome. And Wendy, where can the kids check you out?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at just this name down here, Wendy Lee Szany. You can find me right here on YouTube at the Movie Couple channel, where we talk about trailers, TV shows, movies, and so much more.
Awesome. And I'm Jami Philbrick. You can find me at Philbrock on Twitter and Instagram, or just at my name on Facebook. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week on Pop Council Podcast. Bye.
Bye.